All right, let's dive right in. We're going to talk about a condition that's a huge player in both stroke and dementia, but one that most of us, honestly, have probably never even heard of. It works in silence, deep inside the brain's most delicate wiring. Today, we're decoding cerebral small vessel disease.
It kind of makes you think, doesn't it? What if some of the biggest threats to our brain aren't these big, dramatic events, but instead a slow, quiet breakdown of the tiniest, most essential plumbing system that we've got?
So what is this stuff really? Well, cerebral small vessel disease, or CSVD for short, is basically the catch-all term for damage to the brain's microvasculature. You can think of it like a problem with the brain's plumbing or its irrigation system. And when these tiny little pipes start to fail, the consequences? Well, they can be absolutely massive.
And we are not talking about minor issues here. We're talking about some of the most serious neurological problems you can imagine. From life-altering strokes and dangerous brain bleeds to the slow creep of cognitive decline that leads straight to dementia. It can even mess with your mood and how you walk.
And if you need a number to really hammer home just how serious this is, here it is. Just having the signs of CSVD on a brain scan is linked to a 4 times greater risk of mortality. That is a truly staggering statistic, and it really shows you why figuring this out is so incredibly important.
So, you might be thinking, okay, high blood pressure, lifestyle, I get it. But that is not the whole story. Not even close. It turns out that our genes, our family's own biological blueprint, are a huge part of this story. And this is where the evidence gets really, really compelling. Just take a look at this. This chart is a perfect clue. It shows the prevalence of something called lacunes. These are tiny little strokes that are a classic sign of CSVD. And just look at the difference between people of Asian and European ancestry. Whenever scientists see a big variation like this across different populations, it's a massive hint that genetics are at play. And this really seals the deal. White matter hyperintensities are another key marker of CSVD you can see on an MRI. And the research shows that they are highly heritable. We're talking 55 to 71%. That means a huge chunk of the risk is literally passed down through our families. It's not just about what you do, it's about what's in your code.
Okay, so here's a super important point. Genetics can lead to CSVD in 2 really different ways. On one side, you have these rare monogenic forms, which are caused by one single powerful genetic mistake, and on the other side, you've got the much more common sporadic forms, which are more like a giant puzzle, with lots of little genetic pieces and lifestyle factors all mixed together.
So let's start with that first path, the single gene culprits. Now, these are rare for sure, but they teach us so much about how this disease actually works on a fundamental level.
Honestly, this is the best way to picture a monogenic disease. Imagine your entire genome is a massive instruction manual for building and running you. In these diseases, there's just one single, critical typo, a spelling mistake. But that one tiny error is enough to cause a total system failure. The cause and effect here is just incredibly direct. You have one specific gene mutation. That mutation directly leads to damaged blood vessels, and those damaged vessels result in severe CSVD. It's a clear, straight line from A to B to C.
And the textbook example of this is a condition called CADASIL. And yeah, that name is an absolute mouthful. It's the most common of these single-gene forms of CSVD, and it gives us a perfect blueprint for understanding how one tiny genetic mistake can just wreak havoc on the brain's small vessels.
So what is that one typo we were talking about? In CADASIL, it's a mutation in a single gene called Notch3, which lives on chromosome 19. And even though it's pretty rare, affecting about 5 in every 100,000 people, it usually starts to cause major problems right in the prime of a person's life.
But like we said, those single-gene diseases, they're the exception, not the rule. The huge majority of CSVD cases are what we call sporadic. And this is where the genetic story gets way more complicated, and frankly, a lot more relevant to all of us. So if the monogenic form is one big, glaring typo, sporadic disease is totally different. It's like having hundreds of tiny little typos scattered all over that instruction manual. On their own, they might not do much, but when you combine them with things from your environment, like high blood pressure, they create a perfect storm of risk. This chart just lays out that puzzle perfectly. You can see genetics is a big piece of the pie, but it doesn't work alone. It teams up with those classic risk factors like hypertension and, of course, just getting older.
It's the way all these factors interact with each other that really determines a person's risk.
Now, even in a puzzle this complex, some pieces are just bigger and more important than others. And one of the most significant genetic players that scientists have zeroed in on for sporadic CSVD is a gene called APOE. You may have even heard of this one before.
Let's just look at the data for a sec. We all have the APOE gene, but it comes in a few different versions, or alleles. If you have one version, called APOE epsilon 4, it can literally double your risk for a specific kind of brain bleed if you're of Caucasian ancestry. But, and this is the wild part, another version, epsilon 2, also ramps up the risk. It's a perfect example of how different little tweaks in the very same gene can push your risk in the same dangerous direction.
Okay, so we've gone deep on the genetics behind this disease, but what's the point? What's the end game? How do we take all this amazing knowledge from the research lab and get it into a doctor's office where it can actually help people?
Because at the end of the day, the goal of all this research isn't just to satisfy our curiosity. It's about completely changing how we prevent and treat this disease to make our approach smarter, more precise, and way more personal. And this is where this really cool field called pharmacogenetics comes into play. It sounds fancy, but the idea is actually super simple. It's the study of how your unique DNA affects how you respond to different medicines. So instead of a one-size-fits-all approach, we can move towards picking the perfect drug at the perfect dose for your specific genetic profile.
And this just opens up a whole new world. I mean, imagine being able to predict who's most at risk years before they ever have symptoms, or discovering brand new ways to design drugs to stop the damage. This isn't science fiction either. It's happening now. We've already seen trials where using a genetic test to help choose the right antiplatelet drug dramatically lowered the risk of another stroke for some people. That's pharmacogenetics in action. Which really brings us to one final, powerful question. As this science keeps racing forward, we are heading towards a future where medicine is truly personalized. A future where a simple genetic test could unlock your hidden risks and give you a roadmap to protect your brain. It's no longer a question of if our DNA will play a role in brain health, but how we're going to harness that incredible knowledge to change and save lives.